I never meant to snoop. That's what guilty people say, isn't it? But I genuinely wasn't looking for anything when I reached into the pocket of Jack's coat that rainy Tuesday morning. I was just checking for loose change before throwing it in the wash, a habit from 15 years of marriage. Instead, my fingers closed around something small and rectangular. A phone. Not his usual iPhone with the cracked screen and our daughter's photo as the wallpaper, but a sleek black Android I'd never seen before. The laundry basket dropped to the floor as I stared at it. Our Boston apartment suddenly felt too quiet, too still. Outside, rain tapped against the windows like impatient fingers. I stood there, paralyzed, the phone heavy in my hand. "It's for work," I whispered to myself, the words hollow even as they left my lips. Jack was a high school English teacher. What teacher needs a secret phone? My thumb hovered over the power button. I knew crossing this line would change everything. Once you see certain things, you can't unsee them. But some part of me, the part that had noticed his late nights grading papers and mysterious weekend errands, already knew what I would find. The screen lit up. No passcode. No fingerprint. Just a message thread open like he'd been interrupted mid-conversation. I read the first message, and the floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "Miss you already. Last night was perfect. Can't wait until she's at her mother's again this weekend." Her name was listed simply as C. The timestamps showed messages every day for months. Photos I couldn't bring myself to open. Plans made while I was visiting my mother in Philadelphia. Lies layered upon lies. I sank to the floor, the cold tiles pressing against my legs. We'd been together since college. Weathered job losses, a miscarriage, my father's death, built this life brick by careful brick, and all the while, he'd been carefully constructing another life alongside it. The radiator clanked and hissed in the corner, marking time as I sat there, numb. I'd always prided myself on being level-headed, the elementary school counselor who could mediate any conflict, soothe any child's tears. But now I couldn't even form a coherent thought beyond the roaring in my ears. I scrolled through months of messages, each one a knife twist. There were inside jokes I wasn't part of, references to places they'd been together, including our summer cabin in Vermont. She knew about the squeaky step on the porch, the way the sunset reflected on the lake, our private sanctuary, now contaminated by her presence. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Jack, messaging from his regular phone. "Staff meeting running late. Don't wait up." I looked at the time. 4:37 p.m. His last class ended at 2:15. Another lie. So casual it barely required thought anymore. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I carefully returned the second phone to his coat pocket, picked up the laundry basket, and continued sorting colors from whites. The mundane task felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's hands moving methodically through the motions of a life that had just shattered. That night, I cooked dinner, set the table, asked about his day, watched him lie directly to my face with the ease of someone who had made dishonesty an art form. I nodded and smiled in all the right places while something cold and determined crystallized inside me. Because while Jack thought he was the one with secrets, he'd forgotten something crucial about me. I'd grown up with a father who walked out on Christmas Eve. I'd survived the worst kind of abandonment once before. And if there was one thing life had taught me, it was that when someone shows you who they really are, you don't look away. You plan your next move very, very carefully. Sleep became my enemy in the weeks that followed. I'd lie awake, staring at Jack's profile in the darkness, wondering how someone could look so familiar and be such a stranger. How many times had that face lied to me? How many times had those hands typed messages to her before reaching for me? The worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the humiliation of realizing I'd been playing a role in someone else's performance. The convenient wife, the cover story, the excuse for why he couldn't stay over at C's place every night. I became someone I didn't recognize. I checked his location constantly, memorized his schedule, created a detailed log of his comings and goings in a password-protected document titled Budget 2025 that he'd never bother to open. The secret phone appeared and disappeared from his coat pocket, depending on the day. Sometimes it stayed home in his desk drawer, when he claimed to be meeting colleagues for drinks. Wednesday afternoons were particularly interesting. School ended early, and Jack would tell me he was helping with drama club rehearsals. The location dot on his phone showed him at Riverside Park for hours instead. I drove by once just to see. His car was there, parked beneath the maple trees where families picnicked in summer. I didn't get out to look for him. I didn't need to. My friend Diane noticed something was wrong. We were having coffee at that little cafe near the library when she reached across the table and touched my hand. "Kate, you've lost weight, and you keep checking your phone. What's going on?" I nearly told her everything then, but the words stuck in my throat. Saying it out loud would make it real in a way I wasn't ready for yet. Instead, I shrugged and blamed budget cuts at the school district. Stress, insomnia, the usual suspects. "You'd tell me if something was really wrong, right?" she asked, her dark eyes searching mine. I nodded and changed the subject. But later that night, as I sat in our empty house waiting for Jack to return from wherever he really was, I realized I was becoming as good at lying as he was. The breaking point came when our daughter Lily called from college. She was a sophomore at UCLA, too far away to see the cracks in her parents' marriage, but somehow she sensed it anyway. "Dad's being weird on the phone lately," she said. "And your texts are super short. Are you guys okay?" My heart cracked. Jack's betrayal was bleeding into her life now, making her worry when she should be focused on midterms and making memories. I refused to let his selfishness touch her. "Everything's fine, sweetie," I lied, hating myself for it. "Dad's just busy with the senior class play, and I'm dealing with a difficult case at work." After we hung up, I made my decision. No more passive surveillance, no more pretending. I needed hard evidence that even Jack couldn't deny. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. As soon as Jack left for school, I began a methodical search of the apartment. I found receipts from restaurants in Cambridge we'd never visited together, a hotel keycard tucked into an old textbook, and finally, in a shoebox on the top shelf of our closet, a small velvet jewelry box containing a silver bracelet I'd never seen before. The engraving inside read, "To see, for all our tomorrows, J. Tomorrows, plural." This wasn't just sex. This was a future he was planning without me. I photographed everything, copying credit card statements, showing charges for flowers never delivered to our home. I downloaded the location history from his regular phone when he left it charging one morning. I even recorded him lying about where he'd been when his story didn't match the evidence I'd already gathered. The file grew fatter, the knot in my stomach tighter. I became a detective in my own marriage, piecing together the story of its unraveling. And as the evidence mounted, so did my resolve. Because I wasn't just gathering ammunition for a confrontation. I was reclaiming my power, one documented lie at a time. On the day I finally had everything I needed, I sat at our kitchen table with my laptop open, files organized, screenshots printed. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, catching on the dust motes floating in the air. 15 years of memories surrounded me in this space. Birthday celebrations, holiday mornings, ordinary Tuesdays that had seemed so secure. I closed the laptop, tucked the evidence away, and waited for the right moment to detonate the bomb that would end the life we'd built on shifting sand. People always imagine these confrontations will be dramatic. Shouting matches with accusations hurled like grenades across living rooms, plates smashed against walls, neighbors pretending not to listen through thin apartment walls. But that wasn't my style. It never had been. I chose a Tuesday evening in April. The cherry blossoms were blooming along Commonwealth Avenue, pink petals drifting down like snow. Jack was in an unusually good mood, whistling as he chopped vegetables for dinner. I wondered if he'd spent the afternoon with her. "I need to talk to you about something," I said, my voice calm. Too calm, maybe. He glanced up, knife pausing mid-slice through a bell pepper. "Sounds serious," he said, trying for lightness, but not quite hitting the mark. "Everything okay at work?" "It's not about work." I placed my folder on the kitchen island between us. "It's about your relationship with someone named C." His face. I'll never forget it. The color drained away so quickly I thought he might faint. The knife clattered to the cutting board. For a moment, there was only the sound of water dripping from the faucet he hadn't fully turned off. "Kate, I can explain." I held up my hand. "I know about the second phone, the hotel in Cambridge, the bracelet, your Wednesday afternoons at Riverside Park." My voice remained steady even as my heart hammered. I know about the cabin trips when you told me you were at teaching conferences. I know everything, Jack. He sank onto a kitchen stool, shoulders slumping in defeat. No denials. No righteous indignation. Just the posture of a man whose carefully constructed house of cards had finally collapsed. How long? I asked. 8 months. His voice was barely audible. Kate, it wasn't planned. It just happened. Things like this don't just happen, Jack. You made choices. Every secret text. Every lie about where you were. Those were all choices. He looked up, eyes wet. I still love you. The laugh that escaped me sounded foreign to my own ears. That's not love. That's ownership. You wanted to keep me and have her too. What are you going to do? Fear crept into his voice now. Fear of scandal. Fear of consequences. Fear of Lily finding out what kind of man her father really was. I'd rehearsed this moment for weeks. Imagined the satisfaction of laying out my evidence piece by damning piece. The vindication of watching him crumble under the weight of his own deception. But now that the moment had arrived, I felt nothing but exhaustion. I'm not going to do anything, I said finally. You are? Confusion crossed his face. What do you mean? You're going to pack a bag. Tonight. You're going to leave this apartment and not come back until I've decided what happens next. I opened the folder and slid a printed sheet toward him. I've taken the liberty of finding you an extended stay hotel. It's paid for 2 weeks. You're kicking me out. Just like that. Just like that, I echoed. The way you started a relationship with another woman. Just like that. He started to protest, but something in my expression stopped him. Perhaps he realized that the woman sitting across from him wasn't the same one he'd married, the one who compromised to keep peace, who looked the other way to maintain harmony. That woman was gone. What about Lily? He asked. You don't get to use our daughter as a bargaining chip. My voice hardened. She doesn't need to know anything yet. That's a conversation for later. He tried once more. Can we at least talk about this? Work through it? People make mistakes, Kate. A mistake is forgetting to pay the electric bill. A mistake is burning dinner. What you did was a campaign. Months of deliberate choices to betray everything we built. I closed the folder. You can take your toothbrush and enough clothes for 2 weeks. Everything else stays until I decide what's next. 3 hours later, I stood at the window watching him load a suitcase into his car. He looked up once, perhaps hoping to see me watching, to establish some connection that might leave the door open for reconciliation. I stepped back into the shadows. When the sound of his engine faded, I walked through our suddenly spacious apartment. I changed the sheets on our bed, poured myself a glass of the expensive Cabernet he'd been saving, deleted his profile from our Netflix account. Small acts of reclamation, the first steps on a long road forward. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Not because I was happy, not because I had all the answers about what would come next, but because for the first time since finding that phone, I was living in truth. No more pretending, no more detective work, just the raw, painful reality, and the unexpected lightness that came with finally setting down a burden I hadn't realized was crushing me. 5 days after Jack left, the questions started. First from Diane, who showed up at my door with takeout Thai food and a concerned expression. Your lights have been on until 3 a.m. every night this week, she said, placing containers of pad thai and green curry on my kitchen counter. And Jack's car hasn't been in the parking lot. What's really going on, Kate? I considered deflecting again, but the weight of carrying secrets, even when they weren't my secrets to begin with, had become unbearable. So I told her everything while the food grew cold. The phone, the evidence, the hotel reservation I'd made for my own husband. Jesus, Kate. She reached across the counter and squeezed my hand. Why didn't you tell me sooner? You've been dealing with this all alone? I needed to be sure first, I said. And then, I don't know. Saying it out loud makes it real in a way I wasn't ready for. Have you called a lawyer? The question startled me. Of course that would be the next logical step, but somehow I hadn't gotten there yet. I'd been so focused on the immediate crisis, discovering the affair, confronting Jack, getting him out of the apartment, that I hadn't thought beyond that moment. Not yet, I admitted. I haven't decided what I want. Diane's eyebrows shot up. You're not considering taking him back?" "No," I said quickly. Too quickly, perhaps. "I mean, I don't think so. But ending a 15-year marriage isn't a decision you make overnight." After she left, her question haunted me. What did I want? The simplicity of it was deceptive. For so long, what I wanted had been entangled with what Jack wanted, what Lily needed, what our life together required. Separating my desires from that tapestry seemed impossible. The next morning, my mother called. Apparently, Jack had reached out to her, seeking an ally. The betrayal of that burned almost as much as the original infidelity. "He says there's been a misunderstanding," Mom said cautiously, "that you're going through something and won't talk to him about it." I gripped the phone tighter. Did he happen to mention his girlfriend? Or the secret phone? Or the fact that he's been lying to me for 8 months? Silence stretched between us. Then, "Oh, Kate, he doesn't get to rewrite this, Mom. He doesn't get to make me the unstable one." "Of course not, sweetheart." Her voice softened. "What can I do?" "Just believe me," I said, surprised by the emotion that cracked my voice. "Just be on my side without needing proof." The hardest questions came from colleagues. The pitying glances in the school hallways told me rumors were spreading. Jack and I worked in different schools, but Boston's education community was small. Word traveled. My principal, Sandra, called me into her office one afternoon. "I heard about you and Jack," she said without preamble. "I want you to know you can take personal days if you need them. And the district's employee assistance program covers marriage counseling." I thanked her but declined both offers. Work was the one place where I still felt competent, in control. The one space untainted by Jack's betrayal. I couldn't afford to lose that too. The questions I dreaded most came from parents of my students. One mother cornered me after a counseling session. "I heard your husband moved out," she said, feigning sympathy while fishing for gossip. "My son says all the teachers are talking about it." I forced a professional smile. "I appreciate your concern, but my personal life won't affect my ability to support your son." She looked disappointed by my non-answer. But I'd learned something important. My pain was not public property. My marriage might have failed, but my boundaries wouldn't. At night, alone in the apartment, different questions circled. Would I have stayed ignorant if I hadn't found that phone? How many more years would the deception have continued? Had there been signs I'd missed before? Moments where truth had peeked through the fabric of our life together, and I'd looked away? The worst question came in a text message from Jack on the 10th day of our separation. "When can I come home?" Home. As if this space we'd shared still belonged to him. As if he could slide back into the life he'd shattered. I didn't respond. Instead, I finally made the call I'd been avoiding, to a lawyer Diane had recommended. A woman with kind eyes and a reputation for fairness who specialized in divorces that didn't destroy everything in their path. "I need to understand my options," I told her. "I'm not sure what happens next." "That's where everyone starts," she said gently. "But you've already taken the hardest step. You've acknowledged the truth. The rest is just paperwork and healing, and we'll help you with the paperwork part." As I hung up, a strange calm settled over me. The questions would keep coming. From friends, family, colleagues, even strangers. But for the first time, I realized I didn't need to have all the answers. Not for them, not even for myself. All I needed was to keep moving forward, one truth at a time. I'd faced down angry parents, diffused adolescent crises, and now confronted my cheating husband. But nothing prepared me for telling my daughter that her family was fracturing. For 3 weeks, I'd managed to deflect Lily's questions with vague explanations about Dad working through some things and taking some space to sort ourselves out. But her spring break was approaching, and she'd be flying home to Boston in just 2 days. I couldn't hide Jack's absence, or the tension crackling through our lives any longer. I decided a video call would be crueler than waiting to tell her in person. So on a Wednesday evening, I poured a glass of wine for courage, and clicked her name on my contacts list. Her face appeared, bright and beautiful against the backdrop of her dorm room. Posters of bands I didn't recognize, a string of fairy lights casting a warm glow. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore the Boston University sweatshirt I'd sent for her birthday, a small act of motherly sabotage against her choice of UCLA. "Hey, Mom." Her smile faded slightly as she registered my expression. "What's wrong? Is Grandma okay?" "Grandma's fine," I assured her quickly. "Everyone's healthy. But I need to talk to you about something important." She set down her phone, propping it against something so I could see her more clearly. "You're scaring me." I took a deep breath. "Your dad and I are separating." Silence stretched between us. 3,000 miles of fiber optic cable humming with the weight of unsaid things. "Because of his affair?" she finally asked. The question knocked the wind from me. "You knew?" She shrugged, but the casual gesture couldn't hide the hurt in her eyes. "I saw some texts pop up on his phone at Christmas. I told myself I was misinterpreting them, that Dad wouldn't do that to you." Her voice cracked. "To us." I closed my eyes briefly, a fresh wave of anger washing over me. Even our daughter had been forced to carry the burden of his secrets. "I'm so sorry, Lily. I just found out myself a few weeks ago. Is that why he called me last night asking if I wanted to stay with him at some hotel during break? He made it sound like you two were renovating the apartment or something." Her voice hardened. "He's still lying. He's struggling with how to tell you the truth," I said, surprising myself by defending him even slightly. "This isn't easy for anyone, but he's the one who cheated. He doesn't get to be the victim here." Her eyes, so like mine, flashed with righteous anger. "No, he doesn't," I agreed. "But he's still your father, and whatever happens between him and me doesn't change that." She wiped at her eyes with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. "So what happens now? With the apartment? With my stuff? With everything?" The practical questions were easier than the emotional ones. I explained that Jack was staying at an extended stay hotel, that nothing would change with her room or her coming home for breaks, that we'd work out the legal details over time. "But what about you?" she asked. "Are you okay?" The simple question nearly broke me. For weeks, I'd been so focused on evidence and confrontation, on practical arrangements and maintaining appearances, that I'd barely asked myself that fundamental question. "I'm getting there," I said honestly. "Some days are harder than others." "I hate him for hurting you," she whispered. "No," I said firmly. "I won't let his choices turn you against him. That's not fair to either of you. How can you be so rational about this? If I were you, I'd have set his clothes on fire on the front lawn." A laugh escaped me, surprising us both. "Trust me, I considered it. But being destructive would only hurt me in the long run, and I've been hurt enough already." We talked for over an hour. She cried. I cried. She asked questions I couldn't answer yet about holidays and graduations and the uncomfortable new geography of a divided family. I promised we'd figure it out together. "I'm still coming home for break," she said firmly. "But I'm staying with you, not him. He can see me for lunch or whatever, but I'm not sleeping in some depressing hotel room so he can pretend everything's normal." "That's your choice," I said. "But don't use me as the reason. Make your decisions based on what you need right now." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet apartment, emotionally drained but oddly lighter. I'd been so afraid of how the conversation would go, of damaging her relationship with her father, of burdening her with adult problems when she should be focusing on college and friends and her future. But my daughter wasn't a child anymore. She was a young woman with her own moral compass, her own capacity for processing complex emotions. In trying to protect her, I'd almost denied her the chance to show her strength, a strength that looked remarkably like my own. The next day, Jack called. "Lily doesn't want to stay with me during break," he said, his voice tight with hurt. "She says she needs space. Did you tell her not to see me?" "I told her the truth," I replied, "which is what you should have done from the beginning. She's an adult, Jack. She gets to decide how she feels about your choices. She's punishing me." "No," I corrected him. "She's protecting herself. There's a difference." After we hung up, I wandered into Lily's room. It remained unchanged from when she left for college. Concert ticket stubs pinned to a bulletin board, shelves lined with worn paperbacks and soccer trophies, the stuffed elephant she'd had since childhood sitting on her pillow. Soon she'd be home, filling this space with her energy and opinions and righteous indignation on my behalf. I smoothed the comforter and adjusted the elephant slightly. For the first time since discovering Jack's betrayal, I felt something like hope, not for reconciliation, but for the possibility that from these broken pieces, My daughter and I might build something new and strong. Something honest. I saw her before she saw me. I was picking up coffee at that little place near the public garden, the one with the blueberry scones Lily loves, when a woman in a camel-colored coat walked in. She was younger than me by maybe 5 years, with copper hair that caught the morning light. Even before she spoke, I knew who she was. Some primitive part of my brain recognized her as the other woman, the secret keeper, the shadow in my marriage. I almost left, grabbed my coffee and slipped out the door before she could notice me. But something kept me rooted to the spot, watching as she ordered a vanilla latte and checked her watch, a delicate silver thing that glinted on her wrist. Was it a gift from Jack? Had he used our joint account to buy it? I didn't plan to approach her. What would be the point? But as she turned from the counter, her eyes met mine, and a flicker of recognition crossed her face. She knew me too. Of course she did. I'd been the obstacle, the inconvenient wife, the reason they had to sneak around in parks and hotel rooms. She froze, coffee halfway to her lips. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the crowded cafe. Two women connected by a man who had failed us both in different ways. "Kate," she said finally, her voice softer than I'd imagined. Hearing my name in her mouth felt wrong, intimate in a way that made my skin crawl. How many times had Jack mentioned me to her? What stories had he told? What version of me existed in her mind? "I don't know your name," I said. "Jack only ever called you C in his messages." She flinched slightly. "Claire. My name is Claire. Claire. Simple. Pretty. A name that would look good next to Jack's on holiday cards or wedding invitations." I wondered if they'd discuss that future together, planned for the day when I would be out of the picture. "I should go," she said, taking a step toward the door. "Did you know he was married?" The question escaped me before I could reconsider. She hesitated, then nodded. "He told me right away. Said things had been over between you for years, just not officially." A bitter laugh bubbled up from somewhere deep inside me. 15 years of marriage, and apparently I missed the memo that it was over. Claire's cheeks flushed. I'm not proud of my choices, but he seemed so unhappy, so trapped. He said you two were just going through the motions for your daughter's sake. Each word was a fresh cut. While I'd been building a life with Jack, planning vacations, discussing retirement accounts, debating whether to renovate the kitchen, he'd been spinning a completely different narrative to this woman, one where our marriage was a hollow shell, where he was the victim of my indifference. "Did you ever wonder," I asked quietly, "why, if things were so terrible between us, he never actually left? Why he kept coming home every night to this supposedly loveless marriage?" She looked down at her coffee. "He said it was complicated, that he needed time to figure things out. 8 months is a long time to figure things out, almost as long as it takes to gather evidence for a divorce where you don't lose half your pension." The realization hit me as I said it. Jack hadn't been waffling or confused. He'd been calculating. Claire's eyes widened slightly. "What do you mean?" "Nothing," I sighed. "It doesn't matter now." We stood in uncomfortable silence. Around us, people chatted and laughed, oblivious to the strange tableau we created, the wife and the mistress, having coffee on a Tuesday morning. "I ended it," she said suddenly. "After you kicked him out. He wanted to move in with me, make everything official. But something felt wrong about how quickly he switched gears. One day he was telling me he needed to be careful about divorce because of how it might hurt you, and the next, he was picking out curtains for my apartment. I hadn't expected that. In my mind, they were still together, building their happily ever after on the ruins of my marriage. "Smart move," I said, meaning it. "He's not who either of us thought he was." She nodded, a hint of tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. If I could go back..." "Don't," I cut her off. "We can't go back. We can only go forward." As I walked out of the cafe, the spring air felt different somehow. Cleaner. For weeks, I'd been carrying this image of Claire as some kind of temptress, a homewrecker who had deliberately targeted my husband. The reality, a woman who'd been fed the same lies I had, who'd finally seen through them, was both more complicated and more human. That night, Jack called again. He'd been calling more frequently lately, his tone shifting from defensive to conciliatory. This time, He wanted to talk about reconciliation. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said. "About us. About what I threw away. I made a terrible mistake, Kate. But we built something good together. Something worth saving." I thought about Claire in the coffee shop. About the stories Jack had told her. About the bracelet engraved with promises of tomorrows. About the calculating way he'd managed his double life. "There is no us anymore, Jack," I said quietly. "There's you, and there's me, and there's the life we used to share. But that's gone now." "You don't mean that," he insisted. "We have history, Lily, a home." "I ran into Claire today," I said, ignoring his plea. "Interesting woman. Smarter than I expected." Silence stretched across the line. Then, "What did she tell you?" "That you've been lying to both of us. That you're still lying, even now. That the moment I kicked you out, you were ready to move in with her. So much for your heartfelt regret." "Kate, I'm filing for divorce next week," I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. "My lawyer will contact you with the details." After I hung up, I walked to the balcony of our apartment, my apartment now, and looked out at the city lights. Boston spread before me, a constellation of possibilities I hadn't allowed myself to consider yet. A life rebuilt on my terms. A future untethered from Jack's deceptions. I hadn't expected my conversation with Claire to be the catalyst for this certainty. But seeing her, this woman who had been both victim and accomplice in Jack's elaborate deception, had clarified something for me. We weren't enemies. We were both collateral damage in Jack's quest to have everything without sacrificing anything. The difference was, I was finally walking away. And in that decision, I found a strange and unexpected freedom.